All right, have and have not fans, just want to do another countdown video for you. Actually, instead of a top 10, this is going to be a top 5, and I'm actually kind of pulling this from a bunch of areas, my blog, Twitter, my have and have not Facebook page, the YouTube channel, of course, and just my own general thoughts and opinions. This is going to be a top 5 video about how the haves and the have-nots can improve as a series. Now, as we all know, even though this show is the it show when it comes to Tuesday night television, don't get me wrong, now I love me some Flash on the CW and Legends of Tomorrow, but priorities is the have and have-nots, in my opinion. Superhero shows are good, but I mean, I've been following this one since episode 1. Let's just put it like that. Now, even though there have been various other I wouldn't call them spin-off shows, but let me just say that due to the success of the haves and the have-nots, we know that Tyler Perry kind of expanded his horizon, so to speak, with If Loving You Is Wrong and Too Close to Home on TLC. Even I'll do a video about that show probably later this week, because I actually finally sat down and watched it. Yes, I have never watched the show. That's because the haves and the have-nots was my priority, and I love it, and I feel so dumb for not watching it. But anyway, this video is, again, just kind of like my opinion, but mixed in with what I'm actually hearing from the fans. So if there are any other elements of the haves and the have-nots you feel should be listed on this video, like things you feel like you should, I guess you could say, if you were put in Tyler Perry's shoes, like if you were writing or directing the show, how would you change things? Now, this isn't a rant video, so in the comments, and again, I have to say that for the most part, let me just say that about 97% of the comments I see are well thought out. Like, even when people disagree with me, for example, you all have well thought out comments, and I appreciate that, because sometimes it makes me see things from a different perspective. Yes, no, I might not change the way I see things, but I love it when I see how somebody else sees things. So with that being said, no particular order here, I think that one of the biggest things I keep seeing here is when it comes down to like the premieres or the finales. Well, let's just say with the finales, they should be 2 hours long. I mean, because in some cases, and again, this is just my opinion, there have been seasons where the episode before the finale is like 10 times better than the finale itself. I'm going to be honest, like this last finale we had, the episode before that, where we had the aftermath of, Benny and Hannah at the funeral home. It was not too far after the Warlock shootout in the Malone restaurant. That, to me, that was a very good pre-finale episode. The finale itself, in my opinion, I've done an episode review on it, it wasn't that good. Yes, of course the funeral, and I've said this like 8 times already in other videos, the funeral home scene, where Candace goes off on Hannah, Hannah goes off on Candace in love, mind you, and then says her goodbye to Quincy Jr. After that scene, Tyler Perry could have just cut the episode off. I would have been completely satisfied. Like the first 10 to 15 minutes of that episode was fantastic. But when it comes down to like the last 30 some minutes or so, honestly, it wasn't bad, but it didn't have me like, really invested in it. If anything, it's more like, okay, we know a car wreck's coming up. So, because I just hate when characters make stupid decisions that are usually out of their character, like Jeffrey not listening to his father, which he's done before, but going down to the courthouse after Veronica literally threatened putting him in jail. But I digress. So I would say that when it comes down to the finales, there's a lot of ground to cover in about 40-45 minutes, however long the episodes run. So I feel like 2-hour finales would definitely be something that would improve it, because if I'm not mistaken, If Loving You Is Wrong, I believe he typically does the 2-hour finales. So fans really do say, like, if Loving You Is Wrong can get a 2-hour finale, why can't the haves and the have-nots? And I'm gonna say that I agree with that. Now, another one in regards to the finales, and I've begged for this, I've done videos and blogs on this, put the show on DVD. Seriously, there are just so many things that not everybody, and again, I'm an addict. I don't know if I'm the #1 fan. I mean, I'm not saying I know the most about the show. I'm not, because I'm just a fan like you all. But at the same time, I know that I need to be checked into a clinic when it comes down to the haves and the have-nots. What I will say, and again, one of the most flattering things I've seen since way back during my Twitter days when I first got started, people call me like the have and have-not encyclopedia. It's like, man, how do you remember something from season 2? It's like, well, you know what? If there's anything I need to know, I know to ask you in the comments or whatever. So I appreciate that. So again, I'm not saying I'm the number one. I will say this, not to my own horn now. Now I feel like I might be in like the top tier of fans, but I'm not a fan that has like a have and have not tattoo of Veronica or something like that. So honestly, if any of you all have that level of dedication, kudos to you. But putting the show on DVD means that for people who don't watch the series on or discuss it on the regular with other people, that's why it's easy to forget little details. This show is one of those things where you have to pay attention to everything, because all right, I don't even know, this might be a bad example, but back in my day when I was a kid watching ABC, you know, like during the weekday nights, I remember the show called The Mole. Anybody else remember that? Let me know in the comments. It was kind of like a detective show, so to speak, where the show would start off with like 10 or 15 people. One of them was the mole, and then every episode there were a bunch of like different events they would have to do with each other. And the thing was, you have to figure out who's the person who's sabotaging everybody else. And then like at the end of the series, it's like the person who makes it to the end or guesses who the mole is wins like a set amount of money, and there's eliminations each week. I think they have to take a test. It's like, ooh, well, John, he knocked over the wheelbarrow, so his team would lose, so that's means he's a mole. You know, basically that's how the haves and the have not is. You have to pay attention to stuff. The thing is, there's sometimes, I'm going to admit, I've done this plenty of times, there are clues that aren't even there, but I think they're there. One of the big, I'll never forget it, Catherine Cryer, Renee Lawless, this was like the beginning of season 3, back when Amanda was running around the house, you know, with the gun before the shooting. She went in like Wyatt's room and her Catherine's room, and Catherine had a ring on her finger. But then when we get to season 3 episode 1, I don't think the ring was on her finger when Catherine was laying down, and I tweeted her about it, and she was just like, let it go, and I'm like, okay. So I was like, oh wow, it was one of those clues where it wasn't necessarily a clue, but it was just like one of those things where, okay, when we shot that scene, there wasn't a ring on her finger, no big deal. And I remember she tweeted out later that day to me personally, she's just like, oh well, I must have taken it off when I went to the bathroom or something like that. I thought that was hilarious, because when I felt like I was being scolded by Catherine Cryer to begin with, where it's like, let it go. I'm like, oh, dang, okay. But then later that day, she tweeted me saying, LOL, I think I took it off when I went to the restroom or something. I thought that was a nice touch. Very good, because it made me feel like, oh man, these people really do care about the fans. So putting it on DVD not only will help the show stay alive when it goes off the air in a couple of years, I believe in 2020, but also I'm going to be honest, I feel like even after the haves and the have-nots has gone off the air, I'm still going to be talking about it. I might make a few videos here and there, or you know, if there's a new Tyler Perry show that's kind of on par of the haves and have-nots when it comes to like, okay, this is a drama soap opera that I have to stay invested in, I'll be more than happy to continue the conversation. And I feel like this is definitely, again, even when the show is off the air, I for one think this show will live on, just because of how awesome it is. All right, now we get to number 3 here. This actually goes along with number 2, so let's just put it this way. I feel like when it comes out to number 3, there needs to be like a quota or like a cutting point when it comes to expanding the character roster. What I hate about this is when every time, I remember like season 2, season 3, you know, introducing people like Mama Rose and Maggie Day. They were very important characters. Well, actually, they were kind of like side characters, but later on they became bigger, more prominent characters. Like I believe Allison, who played Maggie Day, said that Maggie Day was supposed to be maybe like a 2 or 3 episode character, but then her role expanded into the main cast, and that was great. And even with people like Erica, you know, she became a person who had like a couple cameos. Now she's a main character. And I love it how you watch the opening credits, you know, the music, dun, 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 and then during the first scene, you see like the characters, well, the actors and actresses' names show up on the screen. Like people like Warlock and Mitch and Erica. I'm like, oh, snap, that's really cool, because I remember where they had 1 or 2 episode appearances, and now they're in the main cast. But the problem with that is, when you expand it too much, it leaves a little bit of breathing space, meaning that there are way too many characters in a given episode, meaning that if, let's say, there's 20 characters in the show, that means like every episode, let's be honest, when it comes down to every episode of the haves and the have-nots, there's really only 2 to 4 areas or scenes we see like, okay, we have a scene at Catherine's house, we have one at Hannah's house, we have one at a hospital or a hotel, and then somebody out in the street. And that's pretty much it. And I'll get into that when we get to number 1. But when it comes to expanding the character roster, the only characters I really want to see introduced to the series to this point are like the family and friends of characters we know, like Veronica's mom or some of Catherine's siblings, or Candace's father and things like that. I just feel like any characters who are introduced to the series should definitely be already affiliated with characters who are in the show, because I feel like that will expand not only the character roster in a positive way, but it would be more of expanding the background of the characters we already have, which leads to point number 2, which is fleshing out the characters who are already on the show. Again, as I said before, I feel like and again, the Veronica video I made about has her death been confirmed, I think there's over 100 comments already. It's just blowing my mind about how many there's actually a split here. Most characters are like, no, she can't die. Veronica is the show. I'm going to stop watching if Veronica dies. There's about a 25 to 30% number of comments that say, you know what, I'm tired of Veronica, she needs to go. And again, a couple of comments were really well written, and they said things like, I only want Veronica to die if she's going to be the same character she's been for the past 2 or 3 seasons, where she's been like this crazy woman who's always out to get somebody else, and she's just like playing the same wicked witch thing, and she's getting away with everything. So if she's going to be the same way without any explanation, she needs to be killed off. In a way, I really do agree with that, because honestly, I love Veronica, and again, I've said this time and time again, Angela Robertson just nails the role. She kills it every time. But here's the thing. You can only ride the same horse so many times before it collapses. That's probably a bad analogy, but I'm kind of tired right now. What I'm saying is, if we get some explanation of why she hit this level of psychotic, I will be satisfied. Like, that's why I want her mother finally introduced. She was mentioned in season 2. We haven't seen hide nor hair of her since. Again, when I say see, I mean we literally haven't physically seen her on the screen. I feel like she should definitely come to the show, expand Veronica's, past, her personality. If her mom's the same way she is, I feel like that would add more depth to her character, so we can appreciate Veronica more than just seeing her, riding around on a broomstick causing mayhem wherever she goes. So fleshed out characters is definitely something I want to see. And finally, this is an opinion, but I feel like this is the most, I guess you could say, the most popular improvement I've seen people say. Move at a faster pace. There have been episodes, and again, at the beginning of this previous season, I believe it was season 5. I think it's season 5, and I think we start season 6 in January. I don't know. It's just confusing. Let's just put it this way. The most recent season, I praised it because the first 2-3 episodes were just amazingly in terms of pacing. We got to visit various locations. We got new locations. We had characters talking about things that matter. We didn't have characters on the screen for like 10 to 15 minutes just talking about something, we already know. Well, that we know, but the fans don't. I mean, the cast members don't know. One of the biggest complaints, though, when we hit like the middle, I'd say episode 5 to 8 of this previous season, is Candace doesn't know yet about her baby being dead. It's like everybody knows but her. And somebody, again, this is a tweet. I need to start screenshotting these things. Somebody made a tweet that really had me rolling. It's like, you know what? This show is getting old, because what happens every episode is like in episode 4, we'll see 2 characters talk about something. And then in episode 5, we'll see one of those characters talk to somebody else for 10 minutes about what they learned in the last episode. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, that is a trend. That's why the pace isn't perfect. Some episodes are just so smooth. They are just smooth. Like the episode before the season finale, that was just great. I believe that was the one that ended where wasn't that the one where Jim came over to Catherine's kind of like vacation house or whatever, and then had sex with her? That was like good pacing and a surprise. Like, even I didn't see that coming. But then the finale itself was like, after the whole funeral home scene, after that, I just kind of sat there like, okay, I'm waiting on the car wreck now. I will say this much. If I were to spit out one episode, like, if you ask me what was the worst episode, when I say worst, I don't mean that it was absolutely horrible, but it's the first one that comes to my mind when I think about bad pacing. that would have to be the season 2 finale where Amanda shot herself. I thought that was one of the worst episodes of the Haves and the Have-Nots, in my opinion, simply because the hype was raised too much for Amanda shooting herself. But the episode itself was just, there were scenes that made me laugh, like when Quincy came over to the party, you know, at Jim's house and beat him up and then told the truth about Candace and Jim, and then Amanda ran off. Ran off. Those are great scenes, but the episode just dragged. It's like the pacing was just horrible. I mean, 1 minute you have, okay, we're going to have this dinner party. The next minute, okay, Quincy shows up. Then the next minute, Jim's like, hey, David, dig up everything on Quincy Maxwell right now. Find out who got him out of jail. And then, you know, Amanda ran up to a room and we don't see anything else from them. All we see is that, okay, David's at the Sarandon Hotel. Him and Maggie are there. Then Jim gets up and gets abducted by Warlock's crew. And then they jump back to the hotel where Dave is contemplating going to Maggie's room. He calls Veronica, but she doesn't pick up the phone. He goes into Maggie's room. And then out of nowhere, you have Psycho Amanda running around. And it's like, there was no build up whatsoever for that. I mean, to me, it was kind of like the car wreck with Melissa. Because we just knew it was coming based off the preview. We just didn't know how it was going to be executed. I'll say that was a bad scene too, because we have 1 minute that Veronica, Justin, and Jeffrey are in the courtroom. She reveals the truth about Justin and Jeffrey to his wife. And then the next thing you know is like, I gotta go to the hospital and pick up this girl. If I'm not mistaken, all we see is like an overview shot of the hospital. And then the next thing you know, hey, we're in the car. And it's like, okay, there was no whatever. So when it came to Amanda, and I've said this in a couple videos before, we don't even see her like in her room thinking things over. You know, I wanted to see that kind of mental break she would have had, because remember, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde thing with her. It's like, you know, finding out the truth about Candace, finding out about her dad lying to her, and then her suspicions were actually true, and then getting to the point where she's going to run around with a gun. We don't get any of that. So with that being said, faster pacing has to be the #1 thing that I would say fans are demanding in terms of improving the haves and the have-nots. So again, those are just my thoughts mixed in with a lot of the tweets and comments I've seen on videos and Twitter about the show. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree with this top 5 list? Are there any other areas you would improve on? And I'll catch you in the next video.